RuneLite is the most popular client for Oldschool Runescape. It's used by tens of thousands of players, and that number is growing. But what we've seen with this continued growth is controversy. Not only has RuneLite effectively stomped OSBuddy, the former #1 client, into the grave, but at one point Jagex wanted to even ban the client, and that caused another controversy around alleged invested interest. On top of that, recently we've been seeing RuneLite spin-offs surfacing that incorporate the banned plugins back into the client, and then people are going, downloading them, and abusing those banned plugins to get an unfair advantage. And that's why I was so excited to do this interview. I not only have tons of questions about that stuff, but I also wanted to hear about his motivation behind actually creating the client, maintaining the client, making it open source in the first place. I think you're going to really enjoy this interview, and I think you're going to learn something about Adam, the founder of RuneLite, that is a little worrisome. Of course, it's always good to get a background. So the first thing that I asked Adam was, why did you decide to start RuneLite? And actually what he told me is that it came from really frugal beginnings. He liked the features in OSBuddy Pro, this was around 2014, but he didn't want to buy them. He went on to say that he thought he could make his own client since he had a good working knowledge of Java, and back then in 2014, these third-party clients were much less advanced. So all of the pro features available back then really pale in comparison to what there is available today. It was within his scope of doing. The next and really important question was, what is your history as a player? What you'll find is that his background really proves his understanding for the game. So he originally maxed back in 2010, quote, back when maxing was cool, and at one point he was even in the top 500 people playing the game in the world. He also told me that this was back when the high-level forums was a thing. Some of you might remember that. It was kind of an exclusive forum for people that were maxed, and ModMattK ran that forum, and this is how Adam first started to get to kind of meet ModMattK, who obviously he has a much more profound relationship with today. He told me then Dungeoneering came out, and he got 99 and 120.
A world brought to its knees, shaken by an unknown power. Demonheim awaits.
And eventually, he even had a completion escape too, and was working towards the trim requirements when Evolution of Combat came out. And then EOC came out, the game died. He told me he didn't know how to kill anything anymore, and so he sort of AFK'd skills for a while until Oldschool Runescape came out. He told me that he didn't jump into Oldschool Runescape immediately because his RuneScape 3 account was really significant. He was maxed, had a completion escape, was working towards the trim requirements. A lot of time was put into that account. It took him nearly 6 months before he really switched over to Oldschool Runescape. And that was after the initial rush, which he said, quote, was nice because I could just buy things as the economy had settled, kind of. From there, he told me he, quote, went on to do it all over again. He's now maxed on Oldschool Runescape since 2017. My next question was, why open source? It was so unusual because at that time there was no other open source clients, at least not any popular ones. So what was the motivation behind that decision? And he told me this, quote, I quickly realized it was a ton of work and I didn't think I had the resources or even the knowledge to do it all by myself. He went on to say that open source solves both of those problems, and additionally, it made it much easier to convince users to actually use the client because, hey, they could see what was running behind the scenes, they could see that there was nothing malicious. He also went on to say that sometime after he originally started work on RuneLite, but before it was released, Konduit became a thing, and many of you probably remember that client. He said that he saw it was basically 1, free, and 2, better than OSBuddy in many ways, but despite having more value at no cost, its user base was still not so impressive. And from seeing that, he thought that if he ever wanted RuneLite to go anywheres, it would have to be open source. He also left a little side note. He said Konduit was great. He used it for a long time actually, and he almost stopped developing RuneLite because of it. And RuneLite took a lot of inspiration from its design, so that's a fun little fact about Adam, the creator of RuneLite. Remember at the start of the video, I mentioned there's something going on with Adam that's a little worrisome. Well, this next question gives us the first taste of a theme that we're going to see throughout the rest of the interview. I asked him, how do you stay motivated to still continuously work on RuneLite? He's been doing this for 5 years now. That's a long time to have been working on anything. He told me this. He said, I've been finding that harder and harder lately. Some of the work is still fun, figuring out new things, but most of it is a chore I don't enjoy so much. I'm going out of order here, but his response to this question really fits in well with his response to the last question I read to you. I asked him, how does it feel to have started something and to have it grow so big? He said this, it's stressful. It also makes me feel like I have some obligation to continue developing the project due to all the people depending on it, even though I know that I really don't. He went on to say, though, that more early on it was rewarding to see people using RuneLite. He told me that he used to go on Twitch alone to watch large streamers using a software because it was really nice to see people enjoying what he had created. I think the biggest takeaway here is that Adam's getting burnt out. He's been at this for a long time, 5 years. He told me that he's putting in over 20 hours a week maintaining RuneLite, and through talking with him, his outlook on the client's future is bleak. He's really worried that Jagex is going to take some sort of step to prevent third-party clients from being allowed.
But we have to focus on what is the right thing for the long-term success of the game. And we want the game to be here in 10 years. Many of the players want the game to be here in 10 years, and these are the hard decisions that sometimes we have to make, and they're not always going to be popular.
And when we look at what he's actually getting in return from this, it's not very much. His Patreon brings in $426 a month between his server cost and more so his personal time cost. That's not really worth it. Hey look, I'll leave his Patreon in the description below. If you're somebody who actively uses RuneLite, you've got some spare money, I would encourage you to go over that way. Okay, let's get out of that topic now and back into some of the more controversial hot topics. Per a recommendation, the next question was, what are your thoughts on the new Uncensored RuneLite client, which offer banned plugins and such? Adam said this, quote, there are banned plugins and then there are banned plugins. He went on to say that most of the plugins he refuses to let into RuneLite are out of personal opinion that they don't fit the direction the project should go. He said if someone wants to make their own client with those, I think that's fine. But then there are the plugins Jagex has told me not to add to RuneLite, and the fact that these clients add those, I think, is a red flag. He said the biggest issue that he has with these clients is that they're using his name, RuneLite, in their product. A lot of people cannot differentiate between RuneLite and these clients, and I worked hard for RuneLite to have a good reputation. Imagine Jagex made an official statement that these clients are banned. RuneLite would probably die just from the mass information / mass misunderstanding. In regards to this question, I also asked, do you think RuneLite did as much as it could to maintain integrity? To which Adam responded, quote, I ask myself that every day. I firmly believe RuneLite would have never gotten anywhere near where it is now without having been open source enough to attract knowledgeable developers to build it. He went on to say that now, about 3 years later, it has really come back to bite me hard. He said he is trying as much as he can to retroactively fix the situation, but he thinks it is too late. He said, I think that the current third-party client situation is the biggest threat to the longevity of Oldschool Runescape. It angers me that I am basically, indirectly, responsible for this. He wanted to say that he thinks time will show that this third-party client situation will be a major contributor in the death of Oldschool Runescape, and that is the main thing which makes him really want to just walk away from the project completely. There was also some curiosity around the fake RuneLite clients which are being used to phish people, so I wanted to know his thoughts on those, and he told me this. He said, "The fake RuneLite clients used to be pretty bad, but now it's well known, and every time I see someone mention RuneLite, they always specifically mention to watch out for the phishing websites." He did tell me though that it's the same guys running the fake botting websites and the fake RuneScape private server websites. They're phishing across many different avenues, not just pretending to be RuneLite. There was also a question from one of you guys asking if he received any backlash from the OS Buddy devs for essentially creating the same client but for free. Adam said, quote, "No, I would say I am friends with some of the OS Buddy devs. They've never given me any problems." End quote. So it sounds like the OS Buddy team has been very professional towards Adam and RuneLite. There was another question asking if he ever talks to anybody at Jagex, and is it in a positive or negative manner. And Adam said this. He told me, "Not usually. I try to keep contact with them more than they try to keep contact with me. It's similar to talking to a wall." He said he would love to see more Jagex involvement when it comes to third-party clients, for sure. The final question that I asked Adam was, is there anything else that you want to add? Because often when people tell me things on their own, it's the most interesting. And he had a lot to say, and it is very interesting. So to start, he said, quote, "Recently, the Konduit developer Foxxi stated that Jagex forced them to shut down Konduit Prime, their paid pro version of Konduit, back in January of 2015. While at the same time, OS Buddy was allowed to operate their pro version. At the time, Konduit lied about the reason why they made their entire client free and did not say that Jagex was involved with it."
About a lot on Reddit because Jagex actually stopped the production of Conduit Prime, said we were not allowed to have a paid subscription client. However, this is the time OS Buddy Pro existed, so that kind of spiked a lot of juicy drama because it kind of showed that they're kind of in cahoots with OS Buddy. There is something there. There is some kind of royalty, I'm sure.
Yeah.
He went on to say that he finds this very concerning since it is essentially Jagex stifling client competition. Konduit was closed source and the development would have been funded from the subscriptions. And so I think that this essentially is what killed Konduit off. I think this should be more well known and questions should be asked of Jagex about what their relationship is with OS Buddy because of this. End quote.
I talked to Ronan at TwitchCon, got him a little drunk, learned a lot of things that I shouldn't have learned. Some sketch, dude. There's some real big sketch. Deeper in the community.
You know, I think what he just said there is very important. There's always kind of been a conspiracy around Jagex having an invested interest in OS Buddy, and from their prior actions, that's really where the conspiracy arose. And this is just another piece on top of that pile.
You knew how many subscribers OS Buddy had. Do you know how many they have now, or maybe ballpark it?
I would say probably upwards of 50, maybe 40 to 50,000 still active subscriptions.
And that's $2 a month, so that's 100,000 possibly coming in a
month. Over $1 million a year. It's $1 million company, yeah. So
a thought is that if Jagex bans third-party clients because of the recent issue around the banned plugins being put back in by these third parties, that instead of just banning all third-party clients, they'll probably only allow OS Buddy to exist.
There won't be custom clients. There won't be any more issue with this very soon. I'm pretty confident in that.
He also told me this. He said, quote, "I guess another thing I want to add in somewheres is that some of the RuneLite features I don't necessarily agree with, but they were present in OS Buddy Pro. Bone menu swapping, Barrows minimap overlay, prayer reordering, being able to click to walk further, most of the clue scroll stuff. Quote, the only thing we added was the hot cold solver, to name a few. And so that's why we have it. I see misinformation about them, like people didn't know OS Buddy Pro had them before we came along. So they think that we are the ones that introduced them, and thus RuneLite gets the hate for having those features." And that was it for the interview. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and remember, Adam's Patreon is in the description below. If you're rich and you have a few extra dollars, I'm sure he would appreciate it. Anyways, once again, thank you guys all so much for watching. We're coming up on nearly 35,000 subscribers, which is crazy. I also want to give a huge thank you to my 2 Patreon subscribers. Thank you guys. And until next time, love, peace, and chicken grease.